The Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club, Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Clothing, and the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, the Parramatta Times.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. Troy Warner here, and it is the interview-based podcast which comes out each and every Thursday. And look, it is Origin week, and I'm really excited to bring you this episode because this guest I have on this week is pretty famous when it comes to Origin, and when I talk a little bit more about him, you will understand why. He has played for the St George Dragons and the St George Illawarra Dragons. He has also played for Queensland, and he has also played for Australia. Played in 3 grand finals, unfortunately not a winner in a grand final, but has made 3 grand finals as well. But he is most known, I would say, for this try.
Trailing 12-10. Langer pushing it wide. Walters onward. Khan joins in. Floats the pass for Renouf. Renouf down the touchline. Beats one. Gets it in field. Hancock gets it on. Queensland are coming back. Darren Smith for Langer. Langer gets it away. Here's the big fella. Gets the pass on. Coyne goes for the corner and gets the try. Queensland. It's a miracle.
Oh, yeah. What about that one? Stello.
Unbelievable. What about that from Queensland? I can't believe it. Unbridled joy on the sideline, and why not?
That's not a try. That's a miracle.
That's right. Today's guest is Mr Mark Coyne. And look, when you mention Mark Coyne's name, that try always comes up. And can you believe it is 30 years since that try has been scored, and he still gets asked about it day after day in interviews, and especially around Origin time. Now, this was recorded a few weeks ago now, but I really enjoyed the chat. Look, we talk about, obviously, Origin, and I did ask him about that try, but also other Origin moments as well. 1995 series as well, where Queensland were massive underdogs, and Fatty's team won 3-0. Also talk about him representing Australia as well, a pretty big honour, playing in the World Cup final as well, and also I talk about his career at the St George Dragons, mostly at the St George Dragons, a team that he captained as well. A huge honour to captain the Dragons, considering those that had come before him. As I mentioned, played in 3 grand finals, was captain in one of them, and look, unfortunately didn't get the victories, but his story about the 1996 season is one to remember, because it is a very special story, I guess, and a memorable one for him. Not because St George lost the grand final, but the fact of how they made the grand final. So that story is in there as well. So look, I really appreciate Mark's time for coming on the podcast. And look, this wouldn't be at all possible without the sponsors of the podcast. Jack's Pale Ale, exclusively available at Parramatta Leagues Club in the club shop. Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty, BTZD Teamwear, the Parramatta Times, the official media partner of the Paracave Podcast, and also League Tees as well. So check those ones out as well. Thank you very much for your support of the podcast. I really appreciate it. Look, that is enough of me talking. I just want to get straight into this interview. I want you to have a listen to it and enjoy it, because it is Origin week. and this will be playing from today all the way through to Game 3 of State of Origin 2024, which is on Wednesday night. So this will be playing, and what fitting way to have a Queensland player who is pretty synonymous with State of Origin, with scoring that miracle try in 1994. So look, as Hindy says,
get a beer, coffee, whatever you want.
Sit back, relax, and enjoy, and let's get straight into it. And today on the podcast, I've got a very special guest, a player who I watched play his career growing up watching rugby league, and also has been involved, played for Australia, played for Queensland, played for the Dragons as well, the St George Dragons and the St George Illawarra Dragons, and is also part of one of rugby league's most iconic moments in State of Origin, which we'll get to a little bit later. Welcome to the Paracave podcast, Mr Mark Coyne.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. Good to have me on.
No, thank you very much for joining me. Now, going back to the start, growing up, did rugby league find you, or did you find rugby league?
Oh, sort of found me. I think I'm the youngest of four in my family. I had two older brothers, and they both played rugby league. So I sort of thought, well, they're both doing it, I should do it too. So I wandered down the road to the Sunnybank Magpies, where my two brothers played, and started in under sevens.
And was there a team that you supported growing up, and players you used to love watch play?
Yeah, obviously Brisbane had a pretty strong comp back then, so my favourite team was Souths, because I had Mal Meninga was playing for them, and I used to love watching Mal. But then I did end up following a Sydney team, which was the Dragons of all clubs. So It was sort of pretty cool to eventually, get asked to go down and play for them, given that they were a team I'd gone for since I was about 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah, that's nice. Now, as you said, you played in the Brisbane competition. Just how tough was the Brisbane competition back in the day? Because I've heard from former players that it was really tough, and it was probably tougher than the New South Wales competition.
Oh, I'm not sure about that, but it definitely was tough. I mean, this was a day. The years that I played in the senior comp in Brisbane was in 1987. That was the year just before the Broncos came in. So yeah, the comp was pretty strong. Like you had Wally Lewis sort of playing for Winner Manly, Bally's previous to that. Yeah, so you're virtually playing State of Origin players in the Brisbane comp up there before 88 came, obviously. And once the Broncos came into the comp, it pretty much decimated the Brisbane-based comp, which was a bit of a shame, but I suppose it was always going to happen. And
then with the Broncos coming into the competition, and yourself wanting to pursue a first-grade career, was there any thought of joining the Broncos at all, or was there a chance of joining the Broncos?
Oh, no, there was no chance. They never approached me. And, to be fair, no one really knew who I was. I played most of the 1987 year in reserve grade for Brothers, and then unfortunately for the winger in the first grade team, Vinny O'Brien, he broke his jaw with about probably six or seven games to go, and then they asked me to come up and take his position on the wing for Brothers, and obviously I was doing something right, because St George are up there having a look at a few other guys, and they picked me up. So that's sort of how it happened. I don't think Brisbane was ever anyone Brisbane didn't have any interest in me at the time, Troy.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair enough, and obviously that's how you ended up at St George. Was it a daunting thing as a young kid to move to New South Wales and play rugby league?
It sort of was, because I'd sort of lived at home all my life, and I just sort of finished. Did a degree in business, so I just sort of finished my 3 years at uni, and then all of a sudden I was being asked to move interstate and move away from home. So, and to make things worse, I actually moved into a house with three other footballers who all played with me in Brisbane. So I had Peter Gill and Trevor Bailey all moved in with me at Rockdale, and I had no idea what it was like living with three other blokes, and they were all older than me, so they made me do all the hard chores, Troy.
Oh, that's not very nice. But as a young kid, and obviously having those Brisbane-based players living with those, who else but in the team as a young kid the elder statesmen did they take under your wing, under their wing, I should say?
Oh, those guys obviously were great because I'd played 3 years with them for brothers in Brisbane, so I knew those three guys really well. So I think I was quite lucky that I got to come down to Sydney and live with those guys, because they certainly made it a lot easier. Had I been living maybe with a stranger or people I didn't know, it would have been tough, but they definitely made it easier having those guys about me. Eventually, they all sort of retired or moved on to different clubs, but by then I'd probably established myself and was feeling pretty confident about where I was at in life.
Well, the 1989 Panasonic Cup rolls around and you get a bit of taste of first grade. Did you think then that you were ready for that top grade?
I think so, yeah, because I sort of, as I mentioned earlier, I did have some experience playing first grade up in Brisbane, and the comp was a good comp back then because that's before sort of the Broncos came in, so it was a strong comp. So I felt I spent a year under 21s, and I had a good year sort of establishing myself, in the red and white colours. And then the next year I sort of played mostly reserve grade, but then I got the opportunity, to play first grade. And I felt like the time was ready for me. I felt pretty confident, and Craig Young, who was the coach at the time, gave me my opportunity, and never looked back.
What do you remember about your debut? Was first grade everything you thought it was going to be like?
It was, and it was a game we were playing Balmain, I think was my debut at Kogarah, and Kogarah was virtually underwater because it just had rain and rain and rain. And I remember doing one of my first hit-ups, back in the day they used to do the winger up, and that's when wingers were really little like me, so you're not big boys they are now, Troy, but you had to do a winger in off one of the taps because Craig Young reckoned that would toughen me up. And I remember hitting the ball up and I was running into Paul Siren and Steve Roach, Bruce Maguire. And I remember just getting smashed and nearly drowning because the ground was so wet. I was pushing my head into the water. So I nearly drowned my first hit up. So it was a good awakening to first grade in the Sydney comp for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely a good definitely a great debut and obviously memorable in that way. Well, 1990 rolls along and you're playing some pretty consistent first grade, and you get to debut for Queensland in State of Origin. No doubt a Queenslander kid's dream to play State of Origin.
Yeah, it was still surreal, that period for me, because I obviously didn't think any chance I would ever play State of Origin. Like I'd never ever. I think I made the under sevens Brisbane team back when I was obviously 7, but I never made another rep team after. So I never had any thoughts or had any experience being in a rep team, and sort of it was a really weird experience because in 1990 I was the 18th man for Wally Lewis, so he had a sore hamstring. And I remember sitting sort of in the hallway watching Wally run up and down the hallway of the hotel to see if he could pass his fitness test. And it was sort of a weird feeling because I loved Wally and obviously wanted to see him play. But then also I was like, I'd love to get the chance to put the jersey on. But eventually Wally pulled out after that game and I got on the reserves bench and made my debut. But I think the thing I remember the most sort of when I sort of rewatched, that game is I was sitting on the bench and they put the camera on me. I was just looking at my jersey going, how cool is this? I'm wearing a Queensland jersey. And, and then obviously I got to play other games after that. But, to get to represent, the Queensland State of Origin was just unbelievable, a dream come true for me. And I just really cherish, that time I got to spend in camp.
And then to be coached by the immortal Arthur Beetson as well, that must have been pretty special. What was Arthur like as a coach?
Yeah, really, really good coach. He was very, very knowledgeable and just had little tips. He didn't sort of say a lot to me because obviously I was the 18th man that game and wasn't really sure I was going to play or not. But when I made the team, he sat me down and just told me, just do what you've been doing in clubland and things will go well for you. So he was very, very, very good guy, Arthur, and one of the legends of the game.
Yeah, definitely. And after that 1990 series, you missed 91, but then you play in 92 and you play 6 series in a row. I mean, that's pretty amazing, and all games in those series.
Yeah, I had obviously a really good run. I had to serve a year off when in the 1990 series I threw an intercept to my teammate Brad Mackay to win the game. They won the game down in Melbourne, and then I got put in purgatory for a year, served my penance for throwing that intercept, and then then I came back and made the 1992 team, and then stayed on since then. But yeah, I was just a wonderful experience pulling the Maroon jersey on, but just being in the camps were so amazing, and just the professionalism of training alongside, the likes of Gary Belcher and Mal Meninga and all those guys. It really opened my eyes up, because at St George we sort of hadn't moved to that level of professionalism, I don't think, and to sort of go into camp. And one of the things that really stood out to me, Troy, if you don't mind me sort of going on a bit about it, one of the things that stood out to me is when we went into camp is that these guys were still practicing how to catch and pass. And I was going, that's really, really weird that, surely when you get to this level, you know how to catch and pass. But the whole thing was around the repetition and the practice of it, because the more that you do that stuff, the more or less likely you are to drop a ball in a game or throw a bad pass. And it was just really eye-opening for me. And then, then after that, Brian Smith came to St George, and he was very big on all that stuff. So we did all that sort of repetition stuff, catching and passing all the time. And yeah, it was real eye-opening going, why is Mal Meninga still, practicing how to catch and pass? But that's what they did at that level out there, that you never sort of assume that you're always going to be at the top of your game. So all that practice just keeps, gets drilled into your head and into your skills.
Yeah, no, definitely. That is amazing to hear that of those players. But I guess it is also true too that when players go into Origin camps and then come back to Clubland, it's obviously a massive positive for them, because they can bring that Origin experience back to Clubland and that professionalism.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. And I think we probably at one point, I think St George just had me and Brad Mackay were the Origin reps, but eventually, obviously, we started getting a few more. Dave Barnhill and Scott Goulet got to experience Origin, Ricky Walford. So the more players you get into a rep team, the better it is, because you do definitely bring back, not just some confidence that you bring back to the club and to the team, but you bring back just some different things that they do, and the way that they approach their preparations, obviously a big thing, and the way that the Origin guys approach preparations just was different to Clubland. And I like to think that we all brought back ideas that helped St George overall.
And as I mentioned, you're involved in a few Origin moments that will stay forever. And as you said to me before we started this, you've been contacted a few times lately because it is 30 years. Sorry to make you feel a bit older, but 30 years since that try in Origin at the Sydney Football Stadium. And as Ray Warren called it, it's not a try, it's a miracle. Did you play the ball on that tackle, on that last tackle there? Did you play the ball at the start? So you started it and you finished it.
Something like it was pretty cool to so I got the ball from the scrum and got tackled, and then after that it went one side to the other side on that second tackle, and got the ball over. So it was pretty cool to start it and finish it.
What were you thinking when Mal Meninga passed it to you?
Oh, I was thinking that I was going to be okay, to tell you the truth, because I've always sort of counted numbers, Troy, and as I saw the ball get turned back inside by Steve Renouf, I was sort of looking at the numbers that New South Wales had, and I was thinking if they keep getting the ball out, New South Wales will run out of numbers, and I'd be a good chance of getting the ball down. And that's sort of what happened. When Mal gave me the ball, I felt pretty confident, because I didn't have a lot of skills, Troy, but I had a really good right foot step during my career, and I was on the right side of the field, so I felt like I was probably going to get a good shot if Mal gave me the ball, and ultimately he did, and I was able to use my right foot to get back inside. I think Freddie and Ben Elias were coming across to get me, and I stuck under them and got the ball down. So I'm very, very thankful that I was on the right hand side of the field. If I had been on the left hand side of the field, I would have stepped out, I think. But it worked out well for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think Brad Fittler mentioned it yesterday on the Footy Show, actually, that he was aware that you had that right foot step, but he still couldn't stop you from doing it, and obviously still couldn't stop the try. So it's one that's obviously brought up every year in Origin.
Yeah, Yeah. Sometimes I feel a bit sorry for Freddie because, he's obviously a legend of the game, and what he's done just been, quite remarkable. And so he always gets dragged back down to missing me on that tackle. So I don't feel sorry a lot for him, but every now and again I do a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Is that the favourite try that you've scored during your career?
Oh, I think so. I think it's certainly the most memorable one, and to win the game, an Origin game on that's pretty cool. Obviously I've scored other tries that have been important, at stages in a game, or depending on where we are with a semi or that sort of stuff. But no, that one's probably the one that I appreciate the most, and obviously it's the one that I'm most famous for. So I've learned to embrace it over time. Troy. I'm not someone who likes a lot of attention generally, but I've learned to embrace it over the time.
Yeah, no, that's well deserved anyway. But 1994 Game 2, like this year in 2024, Game 2 is being played at the MCG. Now, back in 94, it was played in front of 87,000 fans. How was that experience running out to that crowd?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's sort of a different atmosphere, but as well, I'm sure other players that have played, on that stadium and other sort of stadiums that are built for AFL, the atmosphere isn't as intense as it is when you're in a more close environment. But yeah, it was still obviously amazing looking up and seeing all those people there to watch a football match. But you just don't sort of feel the crowd all that much because you're a long way away. In the centre of the oval. But in saying that, it's still a pretty awesome experience. But yes, it's not quite the atmosphere you get from a smaller ground.
Would that mean then that the atmosphere was even less the next time you played there in front of 52,000 people?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it definitely makes the atmosphere. It's just not the same. It's hard to explain why, but some of the stadiums that we did play at, which were more suited to rugby league or soccer, for instance, like you feel like the crowd's on top of you, and you can hear the people yelling stuff at you, which is either good or bad stuff. But yeah, when you're in a big stadium and it's virtually built for AFL, you're still a long way from the crowd. So it was hard to sort of replicate that real good vibe and the crowd engagement. But again, it's still an amazing spectacle looking up and seeing so many people there.
Yeah, definitely. That second game at the MCG, was that the crazy all-in brawl game that happened that night?
No, I think the all-in brawl was in '95. So okay. That was when. That was when we played again. That was the second game down there. I think we played the first game in Sydney in '95, which we won 2-0, and then the one down in Melbourne was next. Then that was when the all-in brawl, and that all started when New South Wales said if Queensland used the word Queenslander or cattle dog or something. Oh no, their word was cattle dog. Yeah. So, but if they heard the word Queenslander, they're going to start a blue, and then that first scrum it just erupted. So it was pretty funny. I remember I grabbed Paul McGregor. We didn't know each other that well back then, but me and him just grabbed each other and we did a bit of a dance. But that was all me and Mary did. We weren't keen to throw any punches.
Yeah, no, that's it. Did you? Was David Barnhill playing for St George at that time?
Yeah, Barney was Dave.
Did you have a go? Did you have a go at him back at training for his efforts in that all-in brawl?
He was pretty ordinary, wasn't he? He threw a heap of haymakers that he missed. But we just talked about it. Barney and I are really good mates. We're still really close to this day. But yeah, I think I still couldn't believe that they lost that series. It was just unbelievable.
Well, yeah, that '95 series is certainly unbelievable, and probably Coach Fatty Vaughton doesn't get the credit a lot for that series because we all see him at the time on the footy show, and we see him like he is now. But what was Fatty like as a coach in Origin?
He was awesome, Troy, and you're spot on. I think everyone sort of thought he was a bit of a larrikin, and what would he be like as a coach? Like, is he going to be any good? But he was really good. He had done a bit of work with Bob Fulton, so he knew football really well. Obviously, he was a great player as well. But no, he was so good as our coach. He really brought us together as a bunch of players that hadn't none of us had played together. Really, I think about 4 of us or 5 had played in Origin before that team got picked. And we had Benny Icahn was like 17 for God. He was my roomie too, by the way. Okay. So I always got the young guys or the wild ones. So I had Riken and Julian O'Neill, yeah, no, Fatty was great. He was really smart tactically. He did a really good job in bringing the team together. He had Chris Close as the manager, and Chris Close was just like so emotional, and he just he just bleeds Maroon, and he spoke to us at the first camp and the first day in camp, and we all just walked out of there like feeling like we were 10 foot tall after what he said, both him and Fatty.
Did you know who Ben Icon was? Because Fatty didn't know who Ben was.
Oh, I had no idea who Ben Icon was, and when he got picked, he roomed with me. And the funny story about Benny Icon when he came into camp as I think 17 or 18-year-old, he didn't understand the rules of camp, and basically, if you could eat whatever you wanted, you went down to the restaurant at the hotel, you got whatever you wanted, you could have prawns and oysters and all that sort of stuff. But if you had room service, you had to pay for it. So Benny was really shy. He didn't really want to go down and mix with the players. So every time I'd look for him, he wouldn't be down at the restaurants that we're eating at. And then eventually Benny took off after the game, and I got left with the $800 room bill.
Oh.
So he just down, so he just kept loading up on the room service and thinking it was all paid for. Then he still owes me about $3,000, Benny. I still tell him grand for all the meals I paid for you.
Well, shout out to Ben Icon if he's listening, or we'll try and get that bill sorted. But yeah, I mean, as I said, could you believe it was a 3-0 series win to Queensland? Because they went in as massive underdogs. I mean, obviously New South Wales went in as favourites, and no one gave Queensland a chance in that game. You guys must have just had that self-belief to get the job done.
Yeah, it is. It's just an amazing sort of series, and another example of Queensland just going against all the odds and doing what we do. But just probably that first game was really important. Like, we only won that first game 2-0, but the resilience we showed in defence, and one of the things that Fatty did, during the week-long camp, is he made us always defend our own try line. So at the end of each training session, he'd spend about 15 minutes making us defend our own try line. And I think in that first game, the 2-0 win, and then probably littered throughout the series in general, is that we saved so many tries. Just by, because we practiced all this work on our goal line defence. And I've got no doubt that that's sort of led to us, saving a lot of tries in the game. And that winning 2-0 just gave us that so much confidence that going to Melbourne, we were all going, God, we can actually do this. Like, we're one game away from winning the series. And then ultimately we did. And then went on to get the clean sweep in Brisbane. So, yeah, it's just it's just another great origin story, isn't it, Troy? Like, there's, Queensland or New South Wales, the history of Origin is just littered with these type of things.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's certainly a series that will never be forgotten, and is right up there as one of the best ever and most memorable. That is for sure. And you've had that try in '94 and this series in '95, so 2 back-to-back, and certainly 2 back-to-back Origin moments. Back to club footy, and the Dragons make the grand final in '92 and '93, but unfortunately lose to the Broncos both times. But going into that '92 grand final, how confident were you beating the Broncos? Because, I mean, they were star-studded.
Yeah, it's probably hard to remember, way back, that's so many years ago now, Troy. But I think not '92. I don't think that we really felt that we were going to, that we probably deserved to be there, because, we hadn't been going well as a team for a few years down at St George, and then all of a sudden to get Brian Smith in, and what Brian bought was a lot different, I suppose, to previous guys. And I think that Brian sort of had us believing, but I don't think we sort of felt that the grand final, we were ready for the grand final yet. And ultimately Brisbane had a super team, as they did, for that period. But '93, I thought, was our best opportunity.
Yeah.
We were really confident. We played really good semi-finals. We won our semi-finals pretty easily, and we felt a lot of confidence. And Brisbane had limped in to the grand final. That to come from, I think, the fifth place, and they limped in, played some really hard games, and I really thought that was going to be the game that we got them. But to give Brisbane credit, Wayne Bennett was an amazing coach. He obviously got them up. And they just, obviously they were a team that had a lot of superstars in there. And unfortunately, we didn't play anywhere near as well as we played in the finals leading up to the grand final, and they beat us. So that's footy. I've come to peace with it, mate. It took me many years. I lost 96 as well, so I've had 3 heartbreaks. Losing grand finals, but over the years I've come to peace with it and feel pretty proud that I still got to play in 3 grand finals.
And also, no doubt, too, pretty special to play with your older brother Peter in a grand final.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah, Pete sort of was. I think most people would say that Peter was a better player than me. He's a bit different in terms of the position. He was a great 5'8", had a great kicking game, but I had no kicking game at all, and I couldn't really pass right to left very well. But Pete was. It was really great to get the opportunity to play with him. He was a really good player in the Brisbane comp. And then we had an injury. I think we had a couple of injuries to Jason Elchin and maybe David New, I think, at the time. And they needed to get a 5'8", and I volunteered Pete to come down to St George. I actually offered to take a pay cut, so they could afford Pete to come down. But thankfully, the club didn't do that to me. But yeah, Pete got down, and he had half the year with us in '92 half a year in 91, and then he played the full year in 92, and we got to the grand final together, and after that he decided to move overseas. He went over to England and had a couple of years over in the English comp, and now obviously he's back in Brizzy now and living up there with the family. But yeah, no, it was really special to play with my brother for sure. Yeah,
no, definitely. A lot of people or a few people say that making the grand final and if you don't win it is not a successful year. What do you think about that one?
It's hard to answer, given I did win a grand final in the Brisbane comp before I came down to Sydney, and that was back when the Brisbane comp was obviously pretty strong. So I still claim that I did that. But no, it's an interesting comment. Over the years, I probably have as I said, I'm comfortable with not winning a Sydney, in New South Wales grand final, but no, I don't think you do that, because you put so much time and effort into the season, and obviously you want to win a grand final, but to get to a grand final is still pretty special, and it just shows that you've obviously had a really good year from a team performance point of view. So I don't think you should look back and wipe out a whole year of what you've done on the field just because you've lost the grand final. I think, again, over time, I've sort of matured a bit more around that, and I feel really proud of making those grand finals. But, looking past that, it's around the efforts that we made throughout, 92 and 93 and 96 to actually get to the position to be in one.
And that 96 grand final was against Manly. They only lost 4 games all year. But I'm assuming you guys were confident of trying to knock them off, having that couple of years experience before in that grand final.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I think Manly they'd lost the grand final a year before. I think in '95. I think I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure
against Canterbury.
Yeah. Then they were in the '97 one maybe, and they against Newcastle, who beat them there. So they had a bit of heartbreak as well. But I don't. I'm not. Sorry, I forgot your question again, Troy. Can you do that?
You might have been a bit more confident, I guess, going into that game, having that experience of 92, 93.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, I think it's a different team. The 92, 93 team was a lot different to the 96 team. And the 96 team was a really weird sort of year, because that was when Super League happened. And I can tell you, in 1996, when we came to training in January, we had 7 players turned up at training because everyone else had decided to go to Super League. So we had basically had 6 or 7 players at training at the start of the 96 pre-season. And then eventually players had to go to court, and they were told to come back and play for St George, because the court case, said that they couldn't go to Super League yet. They had a contract in place, so all those players came back, and I think we lost our first 4 or 5 games in '96. Then as we got all the players back, we started to get a little bit better, and basically then we built really good momentum, to get to that grand final. And unfortunately, we lost it. But just some of the players were a bit different to the '92, '93, so it's always hard to compare. That we had we had more experience. But at the end of the day, we went out there and there's probably some things we definitely could have done better. Manly were a great team. Defensively, they were really sharp. They had a really good defensive strategy that was hard to get around. Ultimately, they won that. But I still look at '96 as my favourite year, Troy.
Okay.
To go from having no players at pre-season training to getting them all back over time, and to building the camaraderie that we did to get to a grand final, and a new coach as well. Like Rod Reddy was supposed to be our coach in '96, and he disappeared over Christmas and didn't come back. And then we got David Waite, and to virtually go from not having a coach, having 7 players at training, to getting to a grand final, I think was pretty remarkable. And I still remember when we won the final against North Sydney to get to the grand final. Me and Mark Bell literally just stood there and cried, like we just couldn't believe how we actually got to a grand final after the start of the year.
Hello, Paracave podcast listeners. My name is Shannon Cooney from Glenmore Park Realty and long-term sponsor of the Paracave podcast. If you're looking to sell your property or buy, or just curious to know what your property is worth in today's market, give me a call today on 0421 588 445.
Yeah, no, that is amazing. I didn't know that there's he only had 7 players at the start of the year in pre-season training, because pre-season training is one of the most important things in a rugby league season, to set yourself up for the year. Was that the year that Gordon sat out? '96?
Yeah. Gordon sat out that year. I mean, I don't really want to go into that too much, Troy. Like Gordon had his reasons, and we all have reasons for a variety of different things. But Gordon sat the year out. As I said, he had his reasons. I would have loved to have had him on the team. I reckon if we had him on the team, we would have become close to winning that grand final, and we would have had a I don't know if he'd have a better year than making a grand final, but it would have been good to have Gordon there all year. But there's no bad blood between Gordon and anyone. We still catch up now and talk. But yeah, it would have been great to have him in that '96 grand final side for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. And your previous coach, as you mentioned before, Brian Smith, he's one of my favourite coaches of what he did at Parramatta. What was he like as a coach for yourself at the time?
For me, he was great for me. He really helped me along in my game a lot. He's funny, when he first came to St George, he said, I just think you're a winger. I want you to stay on the wing. And I didn't like playing on the wing at the time. I considered myself more of a centre. Yep. And I just like to prove myself to you. And ultimately, I got chances to play in the centres, and I played well. So he ended up having to pick me there, which I think that's a victory I had over him, which is nice. But no, he was very good around the discipline side of things, Troy. Like just as I mentioned, he brought in all the, the catch and pass drills, all that sort of stuff. So all the real core elements that make you, a good footy player from a basic point of view. He worked really hard on those things. And then he was really strategic as well. He had a guy working with him called Max Ninnis, who's passed away now, but Max was very good strategically as well. And this had a really nice combination. But he was a hard taskmaster. There's no doubt about it. Like I didn't have. I know a lot of other players had a lot of challenges with Brian and how confronting he was in his coaching style. But I was sort of lucky. I didn't sort of see that side of Brian all that much. Maybe because I was, probably playing well. I wasn't getting too much criticism. But he was a hard taskmaster. But that was all to try and make you a better player.
And then I guess for him to make you captain of the Dragons, that's a pretty special moment as well, to be captain of a special club as the Dragons are.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's a real honour to be the captain of the Dragons. As I said, I'd always gone for them since I was about 7 years old. So to actually get the captaincy and end up holding it for a fair period of time was really special to me. And I don't know why. I think that I know that I trained really hard. I was always a really hard trainer. So I think in that degree I always set the right example. But there were certainly some things that I learned along the way as being captain. I'm sure I did some things that probably weren't great as a leader sometimes, but that's how you learn, I suppose, Troy. And but no, I really enjoyed my captaincy. I learned a lot off Brian Johnson and Mick Beattie, who were and Mick Potter, who were sort of leaders before me. And yeah, it's always good to learn off other people who are doing your role. So I got a lot of experience, and said lessons from those guys, which was good.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now, you also represented Australia as well. No doubt a high honour for yourself. For yourself, is that the pinnacle, representing Australia, or is Queensland Origin the pinnacle, I guess, of rugby league?
It's a good question, but I think ultimately playing for your country is the pinnacle, because basically you're being selected, across the Queensland and New South Wales team. So I think that is the highest honour. It's probably a different type of environment to State of Origin, but State of Origin is just like so. What's the word? It's just I don't know. I was going to use the word feral, but it's not quite feral. It's so full on. State of Origin is so full on, and people are just so passionate about Origin, more so than probably Australia. But Origin was just special to play because I just loved the Queensland jersey, and the competition was so hard and the game was so fast. But ultimately, I think putting on the green and gold is what you aspire to, and that sort of means you're at peak form, against every other player that you play against in the country. So I think that's still the highest honour. But playing Origin was the hardest game and probably the most rewarding that I played.
And you went on tour to England in that 95 season for the World Cup, and you played most games there, including the World Cup final it was played at Wembley Stadium. That must have been a massive experience to play there.
Great experience. Yeah, Wembley was absolutely amazing. The English supporters are just so good, the way that they sing and carry on, and it was really special to get to play at Wembley. I think we played there twice. I think we played England there the first round game and they beat us there, and then we came back and played them again in the final. And it was an amazing experience. And we ended up winning that game, which was obviously pretty awesome, and it was a great experience to go over there and have 5 weeks over there with my teammates, and putting on that jersey and winning the World Cup is obviously pretty special.
Now, I probably know the answer to this question, but how does Wembley compare to the MCG in terms of? I guess you mentioned before the atmosphere at the MCG is a little bit down because of the crowds away, but Wembley's a little bit different, isn't it?
Yeah, Wembley's different. Wembley, you can't even compare the atmosphere. The atmosphere there, just the way that the English sing and carry on, it's just it's unbelievable. And and the stadium's a little bit different. Obviously, it's not as not as big as the MCG. But no, it was a tremendous experience. Yeah, probably it's if I sort of ranked the great stadiums I played at. No doubt Wembley was probably the best. I think Suncorp Stadium, the way that's been built is really special. And then I think things like Homebush, and because I played at the opening of the Homebush Stadium back in 1999 when we played the joint venture team. St George Illawarra played Parramatta.
Yep.
And that had a heap of people. That was over 100,000 in the MCG. So they're good in terms of looking up and seeing so many people there watching the game. So I put them as equal third, MCG and Homebush Stadium.
Yeah, no, I was at that game. That was the opening game of the stadium, and I think I was sitting about 7 rows from the back of the grandstand at the time, and you guys on the field looked like little ants running around. But that was a strange game, wasn't it? It was there was obviously, I think Nathan Kalis got knocked out at the start of it, so there was a bit of a long delay, and then Parramatta went on to win.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, was that the last time they won, Troy? I can't remember now. Money joking.
Yeah, it seems like that.
Yeah, I'm sure it does for you. But that was a good game. I think David Kidwell played that game. Me and David Kidwell used to have We used to have some massive blues, me and him, when we played against each other. Not bad ones,
Yeah.
but we always got into each other.
Yeah, no, he was certainly playing then at that time. But one player on that English tour of '95, and he was actually your centre partner, was Terry Hill, who unfortunately we lost just recently. What was Terry like on tour and as a teammate?
Oh, good fun. Terry's high energy, very high energy. So sometimes he got annoying because he was so high energy.
Yeah.
But no, he was a really nice fella. He was great to play with because he's very, very passionate. As everyone knows, he's a niggler. I never used to like playing against him, but playing with him it was a bit more fun. But no, he is very passionate about the jersey, and yeah, I enjoyed my time playing with Terry. We got on pretty well in the times that we played together for the green and gold, and I've had good memories of my times in camp with Terry. So yeah, really sad to sort of hear what happened to him. It's you don't like to see anyone finish life too early, and unfortunately he has, and prayers and thoughts to his family, and yeah, but he was a nice guy.
Yeah, no, definitely good words there, nice words there, and yeah, we're all thinking of Terry and his family, that's for sure. One thing I did want to ask you played for Australia in two of their biggest wins, and I think they were both against Fiji. One was like 66-6 or something, and the other one was 82-14 or something. How did you not get on the score sheet for those games?
No idea. I had no idea. I'm not even sure I played. I think I definitely played in one of those games. I'm not sure if I played the other, because there might have been a game that I sat out in the World Cup. I can't remember, but you're probably right. If my name's on there, then yeah, it's pretty disappointing that I didn't. I didn't get a try on those ones. But one thing that I didn't score a lot of tries in my career, Troy, over history, but I did work hard on setting up Ricky Walford, because Ricky always wanted to look good for the girls back in the day. So I just thought I'd make him look good by giving him the passes for the tries.
Oh, well, that's the more important thing, isn't it? The try assists.
That's right, mate.
Your last test for Australia was in PNG. Now, we hear a lot of stories about players playing in PNG. Is there a story that sticks out for you about playing in PNG?
Oh, I just think it's the atmosphere in that stadium. Like, you're locked up into a compound when you go over there, because obviously there's a bit of crime over there. So we were locked up in a compound, and then we sort of went out and did the training, and then we obviously played that game. But just the fanaticism of the people, like people were hanging from trees and bushes and the fences and all that sort of stuff. So they just love their rugby league. So yeah, just the crowd, I suppose, was just really manic, and said they were hanging over fences and trees, and so you just see how passionate they are about it. And I think the other thing, it was very hard ground. I remember the ground being very, very hard. But no, that probably the memories, is the ground being hard and just how passionate the supporters were.
Yeah, no, definitely, for sure. In 1999, as you mentioned, that game, round one at Homebush there, was for St George Illawarra. Before the two teams came together, was that a difficult time for the players with two teams coming together?
Oh, I think so. Yeah, you have to think about it. Any type of merger is always hard, whether it's in a corporate world or in a sporting world. So yeah, it was very tough. But Paul McGregor and I took a pretty mature approach to it. We'd been around, the game for a long time. In fact, that was my last year, and I think it was Mary's second last year. But we didn't know each other that well, but we had played each other and been in, played with each other in the Australian team. So we just made sure that we said to ourselves that we need to make sure this works, and the best way for it to work is for him and me to get on it, and to encourage all the other players to get on and work hard and train hard. So I think that, and the approach that Mary and I took was the right approach, where we just made sure that everyone saw that we needed to work together. But it wasn't easy. I've got to say, it wasn't easy, because there was players that we played with in first grade, and all of a sudden they've been put back on the bench or dropped. So that's not easy. So it wasn't not the ideal environment, I suppose, but yeah, end of the day, we had to work it out. So I think David Waite and Andrew Farr and Mary and I took the best approach to it, and I think obviously over that year we kept building and building, and obviously made the grand final. But yeah, I won't say it wasn't difficult, but I think the people that were leaders of the club, took the right approach to it, and I think that led to the club having a really successful first year. Which anyone said you're going to bring two teams together and you make a grand final, I think you'd all say you got nothing rocks in your head, but we made it work, which was great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was at that game too, that grand final as well. But halfway through the season, you announced your retirement. What was the reason for your retirement?
I hurt my knee. To be honest, I wasn't having a great year, Troy. I mean, I played that game at Parramatta, and then I got dropped. The game against Parramatta, the opening of the stadium, I got dropped after that for whatever reason. I'm sure I probably didn't play all that well, probably, so it's probably my own fault. Then I came back. I played a few games in reserve grade, forced my way back into first grade, and then Leichhardt Oval, I hurt my neck. I just went into a tackle and I put my head in the wrong spot and ended up getting a bulging disc. Okay. And pretty much I just couldn't get that right. They couldn't tell me a time when I was going to be able to return. I reckon I was fit to play, a couple of weeks before. Or probably during the final series, but by then, the club was flying along, and Timo took my spot in the centres. He was playing really good football, and he's a great guy, and he's a super footballer, and he deserved to take his spot in that team when I was injured. So I just worked it out that way, and I retired once I realised that my neck wasn't going to get better. Okay. I retired through the season. I had to go and tell the boys in the dressing room Monday, and I don't tear up much, but I teared up a bit that day because it was just obviously a sad day. But end of the day, it was the right thing to do for myself and for my family and for the team. So I got no regrets around what happened. I made the most of my career, and I don't look back on anything that I did during it.
Was it then hard and disappointing to see them? I mean, obviously you were cheering the boys on throughout the season, but then for yourself, seeing them in a grand final and not having that one last crack at winning a comp, that must have been difficult.
Oh, really, really difficult. Probably the hardest week I sort of went through in my life, just thinking, this is how unfair is this game? I played in 3 losing grand finals, and they get a chance of winning one. So yeah, it was a pretty tough week leading into the grand final. I still wish that they won because it would have been great for the Dragons to win, and I could have still said I was part of the team and the squad throughout the year. So it was still really gut wrenching when we didn't win that. But yeah, there's no doubt it was really tough because obviously I would have loved to have been out there, but again, things just didn't work out that way. I had my injury, and that's the way it went, and that's how life works sometimes, Troy, isn't it? You can't. Yeah. Everything can't go smoothly for you.
Was it a hard transition for yourself after football?
No, it was pretty easy. I worked. When I came to Sydney, you didn't sort of get a lot of money when I came back when I was a 20-year-old, and I'd worked. I played 12 years for the Dragons, and I worked full time for 9 out of 12 years. Okay. And I did work for a marketing company, or for a company in marketing, and then I had 3 years where we just became professional because the training just got too much. We were training, obviously during work hours, so I had to leave my full-time job. And then once I sort of finished my footy career, I moved back into business and picked up some work. So I was pretty lucky in a way. I didn't struggle at all with transition. I knew what working in an office environment was, so it wasn't a challenge for me.
Do you think these days, though, it's harder for players transitioning into retirement because it is a full-time professional sport? As you mentioned, you were working 9 out of 12 years, but these days they're all professionals.
Yeah, it's very hard, and I think, and I'm sure you probably know, but the average career is, I think, around about 3 years. So, whilst we see, the stars stay in the game for a long time, there's plenty that come in and out of the game. So I think for those ones, it's got to be particularly hard because they probably haven't earned, big money for many years, and all of a sudden, they get an injury or they're out of form and they sort of leave the NRL, and what do they do next? And I'm sure it's really hard for people. And I know the NRL worked really hard, with the education and welfare teams to try and, get players ready for when that time comes when they leave the game. But again, it's really hard. It's hard to tell a 23-year-old that, you need to plan, you need to have a plan B.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be in the sport, forever and a day. But ultimately, even if you are successful and you play, 12 or 13 years, which they're doing now, at some point you come out of the game, and unless you've done really well financially and invested smartly, like, you can't retire. Like, you need to still work. So I think there's still a balance that's got to be struck around that, but I'm not sure what that balance is, because again, they're paying players more, they're expecting more from them, and it makes it very hard to have a secondary job, and eventually players come out of the game and they've got no education or they've got no experience, and they've got to fight their way, from starting again, really, which is tough.
Well, one of those jobs that you did have for 6 years was on the NRL judiciary. What was that experience like, and were there any familiar cases that you were involved in?
Oh, I did. Yeah, that was a really. I enjoyed my time doing the judiciary. We had a guy called Paul Connellan who sort of was the judge for the ARL at the time, and really enjoyed working with Paul, and some other. Bobby Linden was on there with me for a bit, and Ian Roberts. So we had some different guys that I worked with doing that. But yeah, it's sort of. I didn't mind doing it initially. What I found got really hard, Troy, is that a lot of my friends who I played footy with became coaches, end up being NRL coaches, and they were starting to turn up to some of the judiciary hearings, and I was starting to get really uncomfortable that, there'd be a Shane Flanagan sitting there, for instance, or a Peter Jennell or someone else that I knew, and it just got really uncomfortable because they were good friends. So basically, when that sort of started happening, I just felt like it was too tough for me. Like, I didn't feel comfortable being up there with some of my mates being on the other side of the box. But I did enjoy it, bud, and we always approached it with a view that we had to make sure the balance was right and make the right decisions. And it was enjoyable, but again, it just got a bit too hard when I was dealing with friends who had players up there, being reviewed. So that's why I ended up quitting.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. And these days, what are you involved in these days? What are you up to these days? What's keeping you busy?
Oh, I'm sort of semi-retired now from my job. I ran a pretty large business for a lot of years, and I'm still sort of involved in that business, but I'm just doing 3 days a week now in a different type of role, which I'm really enjoying. Don't have any active sort of interest in any NRL stuff. I sort of have helped out a little bit the Dragons. I've sort of been Shane Flanagan, who's obviously now there. He's got me involved with the former cricket captain Mark Taylor. So Mark and I have done a bit of stuff on leadership down there with the players. But it's not a sort of paid role or anything. We just do it. We love the Dragons. But no, that keeps me busy enough, mate. I'm happy to be semi-retired, Troy, and just trying to enjoy life a bit more with some travel.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. Great bloke, Flano. Shout out to Shane Flanagan. I know he listens to the podcast. I've had him on a couple of times before, but he's doing a great job this year down at the Dragons. Certainly a competitive team this year and just outside the 8 at the moment.
Yeah, they obviously had some good improvement, and I'm sure Shane's looking to still add to the roster, and obviously the more people he can add and strengthen the roster and stop Parramatta stealing our good players like Lomax, then he'll keep building, and Shane's a great coach, and I've got no doubt that the Dragons are in for a bright future.
Well, speaking of listeners, I got when I knew that you were coming on, I got some listeners to bring in some questions, and I've got one question that's the same from a couple of listeners. One's from a N Brown from the Gold Coast, and one's from a K Campion from the Gold Coast as well. And they ask, why did Brownie and also Corey Pearson as well and Campo, why do they call you Lloyd Christmas?
Oh yeah, that's a good one. It sort of started because I gave Nathan Brown a nickname called Berkey, because we were up doing a function at the Gold Coast, me and I forget who it might have been, Dave Barnhill, and no, actually it was Nathan. Nathan was doing an interview with me at the Gold Coast at some sort of event, and the bloke kept calling him Nathan Burke, so I started calling him Berkey. But so he called him, and Corey Pearson called me Lloydie Christmas, because one day at training, I think I just got a haircut the night before. And I turned up at training like at 6 a.m. or something, and I looked like I had the bowl cut.
Okay.
So I didn't bother doing my hair or anything. So I just had this really ridiculous haircut like Lordy Christmas had in Dumb and Dumber. So Brownie latched onto that, and I said that'll never stick. And of course, he's made it stick, Brownie. So good luck to him.
Oh, look, don't worry. Dumb and Dumber is my favourite ever movie of all time. So that's actually a compliment, having a nickname like that. I watched it yesterday, actually, to be honest. But the second question he had was to ask you about how Kevy Walters and Alfie Langer used to wind you up during Origin camp.
Oh, no, they got me. Probably the two best stories from Kevy and Alf. They used to always wind me up. And I got on with them really well. Even I still get phone calls from Alf now at 3 a.m. after the Dragons have a bad loss or the Dragons. Yeah, so he just hammers me, Alf. But it's all good fun. But yeah, there was one. After we lost the grand finals in 92, 93, and just before I sort of scored that Origin try in 94, we had the captain's run at the football stadium. And we sort of finished training, and I was sort of warming down, taking my boots off. And next minute I hear Alf and Kevy yelling at me, going, Coyne. And I've sort of looked up, and I said, what are you idiots doing? I said, we're showing you how to do the victory lap. So they were showing me how to do the victory lap. Obviously, they'd beaten us in the 2 grand finals the years before. So that was one. The other one, but my favourite one is in 1993, we were playing a State of Origin game in Brisbane. I think it was game 1 in Brisbane, and it was a really wet game. And all week, Alf and Kevy, they're real practical jokers, and they were trying to always play jokes on me in the camp, leading up to the game, and they were trying to get me to go for fake interviews and all that sort of stuff. And on the bus on the way to the game, I said to Alf and Kevy, I said, you blokes tried to get me all week, but you never got me. So I sucked in, and they just sort of smiled. Anyway, so we're playing the game, and it was 4-4 with about probably 4 or 5 minutes to go. And Alan Lang has kicked this field goal. So we're winning the game 5-4, and we're coming back for the kickoff. And I'm thinking in my head, all we've got to do is hold onto the ball for 6 tackles and we win Origin 1. So I'm pretty excited about that. So all we have to do is hold onto the ball. New South Wales tried the short kickoff. So we got the ball back. I'm thinking, you beauty, we've got this game won. And next minute, Alf and Kevy start screaming at me they're going to do a chip kick. And I'm just going, what the hell? Why would you kick it? I'm like yelling, what are you doing? And I was just yelling. We're yelling back and forth at each other. I'm in a complete panic, going, just hold the ball. What are you doing? Like yelling at them. And they're still screaming at me, we're going to kick it. Anyway, the hooter goes and we win the game. And I said, what the F was that, you two? And they said, gotcha. So they were playing a practical joke on me, with a minute to go, winning 5-4 in a State of Origin. So they're idiots. Both of them are idiots. They're too good, and they're too good.
Yeah, that's classic. That's funny. That is funny for sure. A quick couple of common league questions. Obviously, the big games, the representative games, some of your favourites. But is there a game that just stands out that you thought, I just really loved that game?
Oh, I think probably that 95 game in Brisbane for Origin for Queensland when we got the clean sweep. Because I played, I think, in 7 series, Troy, and I only won 1 series, which was the 95 series. So to sort of win that series 3-0 probably is really special. And even that third game up in Brisbane, like to go back home and then still beat what was a crack New South Wales team in Brisbane was really special. And just doing the victory lap around the Oval that night was really special. So probably that's probably my favourite game.
And Alf and Kevy weren't there that night.
No, they weren't there that night.
They couldn't see you do the victory lap.
No, they're too busy counting their cash from the Super League, mate.
Other than your home ground, did you have a favourite ground that you used to love playing at?
I didn't mind playing. We played a few games at the Adelaide Cricket Ground, so I didn't mind playing there. Obviously, Suncorp Stadium was one of my favourites because I played in the grand final in the Brisbane comp up there back in 1987, and we won the grand final there. So, and obviously playing there was always pretty special. As a young kid growing up in Brisbane, to play at Lang Park was pretty awesome. So probably that one, mate.
I think you hold the record as the first try scorer at the Adelaide Oval, the first ever game.
I think that's right.
Played there.
Did
you have a least favourite that you used to hate playing at for whatever reason?
Canberra. Not only because I never won down there and we got flogged down there. It was just cold. It was just cold.
That's That's what a lot of players say when I ask that. It's either Canberra, Brookvale, Leichhardt gets a mention as well, but Canberra, I think, if I did a poll, that'd probably be ranked number one.
Yeah, big bold.
Who was the hardest player to tackle?
For me, it was the Pearl, Steve Runoff. He just had this. I marked up against him many, many times, and he had this unbelievable fend where he just used the fend and accelerated at the same time. And he was by far the hardest guy I had to mark up against. I hated marking up against him because he was just so lethal. Got to play with him in Origin, which was obviously great fun because he's a super bloke. But he was by far my hardest competitor.
And speaking of playing with superstars, you played with a lot of superstars of rugby league, but was there a player that you didn't get the opportunity to play with that you wanted to?
Probably, while I got to play like a little bit of time with Wally in State of Origin in Game 2 in 1990, but I would have loved to have sort of played more time with Wally. He obviously he was an idol when you grew up in Brisbane, watching him dominate the Origin arena. I would have loved to have played a bit longer with him, but didn't get the opportunity. So probably he would have been the one I'd pick.
Yeah, no, the King. Shout out to the King, doing it a bit tough at the moment. But yeah, definitely loving this time with Queensland Origin. That's for sure. Time for the quick top 10, and you can elaborate on this, but it's just a simple yes or no sort of answer. Barbecue or tomato sauce?
Barbecue.
And just a side one to that one, fridge or cupboard? Where do you store it?
Cupboard.
Okay, yep, good answer. On a plane, window or aisle seat?
I'm aisle because I want to get out as soon as I can.
No, fair enough. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Yes, because I'm a Queenslander. We love pineapple.
Tea or coffee?
Tea. I hate coffee, so I just have tea.
Fair enough. Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone?
Oh God, that's a really hard one, isn't it?
It is.
I'm probably going to go with Rocky, just with Sylvester Stallone, just because of the Rocky movies.
And which is your favourite Rocky movie?
First one, Rocky 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a Rocky 3 man.
Yeah.
McDonald's or KFC?
Macca's.
Morning or night person?
Definitely morning.
Summer or winter?
Definitely summer.
Coke or Pepsi?
Probably Coke.
And cardio or weights?
I probably can't separate those two. I like doing both.
Okay, no, that's nice. And we'll wrap things up with the set of 6, the sort of personality questions. Favourite sport outside of rugby league?
Probably, that's a good question. Probably golf at the moment. Yep. Golf.
Ever hit a hole in one?
Never hit a hole in one. Troy, no.
No.
Hoping to.
Yeah, no, definitely. Favourite holiday destination?
Probably Mollymook Beach.
Oh, yes, nice. Who would be the most famous person, dead or alive, that you would love to meet and have a chat with?
That's a good question. Dead or alive? God. I might pass on that and come back to it. I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. What's your specialty dish in the kitchen or on the barbecue?
Spaghetti bolognese is my specialty.
Was that a pre-game meal as well for yourself?
Yeah, 100%. I used to always cook that before the game, 100%.
Nice. Did you have a post-game meal that you always went to?
Beer.
The old liquid diet. Nice. Favourite musician or band to listen to?
Always loved the Hunters and Collectors.
Nice.
Big fan of them.
Yep. And which, time for yourself to give up some former teammates, but which 3 former teammates wouldn't you want to be stuck on a deserted island with, and why?
Definitely Gordon Tallis, because he ate all the food. Probably Anthony Mundine, because he talks too much. And I'm gonna have to sledge and put Brownie in there because he's just annoying in general. And so I'll pick those 3: Mundine, Tallis, and Brown.
Yeah, that's a fair trio. Fair trio there. Did you think of a person that you'd love to meet and have a chat with?
I can't think of one at the moment. Sorry, Troy.
Nah, that's all right. That's all
My
good.
head, sorry.
All good. No, thank you very much, Mark Coyne, for coming on the Para Cave podcast today. It's been great to chat to a player that I watched play his career, and certainly one that is esteemed in Origin folklore, I guess. As I mentioned before, that try is always replayed come Origin time. But it's been a pleasure to have you on the Para Cave podcast today.
No worries, Troy. I've really enjoyed the chat, mate. Take care.
Well, welcome back, and thank you for listening to Mark Coyne and his rugby league and life story. And as I said in the intro, it was really interesting. I really appreciate his time for coming on, and there were some great stories there. And thank you very much to those who sent in listener questions as well. A few former teammates of Mark's, and there's some great stories there as well. But it is Origin week, and I thought, why not get a Origin legend on the podcast for a chat? And as I said, I hope you really enjoy that. And every year, that miracle try, is brought onto TV screens. And is, unfortunately for myself, being a New South Wales supporter, it broke my heart that night. I was watching it on TV, but it did break my heart that night. So, Mark, thank you very much for that. But you are always remembered for that try, especially around Origin time. And it is, as I said in the intro, 30 years since that try. Can you believe that one? But it will be played for another 30 years and another 30 years after that one as well. Thank you very much for all the support of the podcast. I really appreciate that. As I did a video the other day of how you can support the podcast, as this is a free podcast, and I want to remain it being free for you, free content. So I have teamed up with the team at Buy Me a Coffee, and basically you can support the podcast in any way you can by buying the podcast a coffee. And what that will do, it will contribute to the costs of the podcast, because as you know, there are costs involved in producing a podcast each and every week, and I want to remain it being free content. So any support is welcome. I'd just like to shout out to Isaac, who bought the podcast a coffee. I really appreciate that. And I also want to shout out to Chris Ricketts as well, who bought the podcast 3 coffees. Thanks, and he left a little mention, a bit of a note there saying, thanks for all the free content, and more importantly, thanks for always being ready to chat about para with him. And Isaac said, nice, with a big thumbs up. So thank you very much, fellas, for supporting the podcast. I really appreciate that one. So that link is in my link tree that you'll see on Instagram. And you'll see it on various videos that I do as well. So if you can support the podcast by buying it a coffee, that would be mostly appreciated. You can also get the Para Cave podcast hats as well, just $10 plus postage and handling. Just send me a message if you're interested in getting one of those hats. You'll see me wearing them at games and in videos and the like. So if you would like to get yourself one, or if you'd like to buy someone else one as well, just message me on social media and we'll see what we can do to get that out to you as quick as possible. Really appreciate the support of those who have bought that one already. And it was great to see a Para Cave podcast polo shirt up at the game at Newcastle a couple of weeks ago there, a supporter of the podcast. So thank you. I'm not too sure who that was, but thank you very much for supporting the podcast by getting your merchandise there. It really stood out in the crowd, the big yellow and blue polo shirt, so with the Para Cave podcast logo stuck on the back. So really appreciate that one. Look, plenty of content on the podcast each and every week. There's the tipping podcast, there's replay chats that I have with the Duckman. There is also any breaking Parramatta news that'll come up. There is something that I have started up in the last couple of weeks, which is a Q&A podcast. So I will put out a post on Instagram probably on a Monday, and you can chance for you to ask me a question about Parramatta, the Parramatta Eels, or the NRL, or myself if you want to, whatever you would like, and send that one in, and I'll do a podcast chat about that one, and that will probably come out on a Wednesday, and your name will be mentioned on the podcast. So keep your eyes open for that one. And look, there'll be an interview-based podcast as well, which come out on Thursdays. But look, this has probably been a long podcast. I really appreciate you listening. I hope I haven't bored you to death too much. And look, I really appreciate I love doing this for you guys, the fans, the listeners. I really love doing this podcasting. So thank you very much for the support. I hope you enjoy the content that I do. Please give it a follow on Apple, Spotify, whichever podcast platform you do, or also on Instagram and Facebook as well. So thank you for those that have. And if you know of anyone who might be interested in this sort of content, please steer them in the right direction and give me a follow on those channels as well. Thank you very much. Stay tuned for more content coming out during the week. Look, this podcast will run until next Thursday, so this will be after Origin. So, look, enjoy your Origin on Wednesday, game number 3. I hope New South Wales can win. There might even be some Origin preview podcasts coming out next week as well with a special guest, so stay tuned with that one. Haven't been able to get one for game 1 and 2, but hopefully game number 3. So stay tuned for that one. There'll be a preview of that one. There'll also be a game day preview of the Titans game, Titans and Eels, on Saturday, probably come out on Friday. So stay tuned for that one. Thank you very much for listening. I've got to go. And as I always say, the Para Cave podcast, by the fan, for the fans. Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Para Cave Podcast. See you next time.